Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and try to solve a massive two-part historical mystery that has fascinated scholars for literally centuries. Today, we're asking two huge questions. What actually killed the greatest empire of the ancient world? And did it ever actually leave us? Now, you might be wondering why that second question is even relevant. Well, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? There was that massive TikTok trend recently where women were asking the men in their lives this exact question, and the answers were shocking. People were saying they think about it daily or weekly. They were hyping up Roman military prowess, the sheer size of the empire, all their technological advancements. It really proved that ancient Rome still occupies this huge, lingering space in our modern minds. But to understand why Rome is still so present today, we kind of have to go back to the beginning of the end. Act 1, the autopsy of an empire. Because, an empire this massive doesn't just fall overnight. We need to play historical coroner here and examine the 10 major theories behind its spectacular collapse. So first up, some historians point to external forces, like the Germanic barbarian invasions. These groups raided and took over Roman lands right when disciplined soldiers were being pulled away to fight in civil wars. But other experts, they look inward at severe moral decay. Roman historians actually noted there were 32,000 prostitutes in Rome during Trajan's reign. And emperors like Nero and Caligula were wasting absolute fortunes on these lavish, crazy parties. But the most popular amusement was the sheer cruelty of the gladiator spectacles in the Colosseum. Add to that a literal public health crisis. The wealthy elites were slowly poisoning themselves by cooking with lead utensils and drinking from lead water pipes. So yeah, it was a highly toxic mix, both figuratively and literally. And all this external pressure and internal decay quickly snowballed into a total economic disaster. Maintaining that massive military just to defend their vast borders completely drained the government's resources. So, to pay for it, emperors raised taxes and started minting coins with less and less actual gold in them, which triggered runaway inflation. Prices skyrocketed so fast that people literally stopped using currency. They reverted back to bartering goods just to survive. Compound this with inferior technology. Because Rome relied so heavily on human and animal labor, they basically failed to invent new machines to produce goods efficiently, which ultimately ended up starving their own growing population. As if that wasn't enough, you have absolute chaos at the highest levels of power. Rome never had a clear system for picking new leaders. Get this, the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's own private army, gained so much authority that they actually started selling the throne to the highest bidder. In one short span, Rome went through 37 different emperors, and 25 of them were assassinated. No way to run an empire, right? Meanwhile, the rise of pacifist Christianity shifted focus and funds away from military defense. Down on the streets, massive estates were using slave labor, which put everyday farmers completely out of business and caused mass unemployment. These displaced workers flooded into the cities, living in shaky, crime-infested, disease-ridden wooden apartment blocks. The rent was cheap, sure, but the conditions were fatal. The urban decay was just absolute. So when we group these 10 social, economic, and political theories together, it becomes incredibly clear that Rome wasn't killed by a single stab wound. It was a catastrophic combination of internal rot, like the lead poisoning and the inflation, combined with extreme external pressures from those barbarian invasions. The empire was quite literally crushed under the overwhelming weight of its own dysfunction. But here's where the story gets really fascinating. There's this famous joke from Monty Python's Life of Brian, what have the Romans ever done for us? It's the perfect question for us to ask right now. Because despite suffering an agonizing death as a political entity, Rome pulled off the ultimate historical plot twist. Act 2, the will and the legacy. The truth is, the Roman Empire never really died. Instead, it left behind this massive cultural inheritance, a ghost, if you will, that still shapes almost every single aspect of your daily life today. Let's look at exactly what we inherited. First up, the very words coming out of my mouth right now. We are quite literally speaking their language. The Romans spoke Latin, sure, but the everyday commoners spoke what was called vulgar Latin for regular social interactions. And as the empire faded, this vulgar Latin didn't just disappear. It simply evolved and branched out into the modern tongues we hear all across the globe today. To really wrap your head around the scale of this, think about the number 920 million. That is the staggering number of people alive right now who speak a Romance language, like Spanish, French, Portuguese, or Italian as their native mother tongue. Rome's voice is still echoing in the mouths of almost 1 billion people worldwide. And hey, given if you don't speak a Romance language, the ghost of Rome haunts your dictionary. If you speak English, an incredible 59% of your vocabulary is derived from Roman words. Even Germanic languages like German and Dutch have a significant percentage of Roman influence. Up to 60% of the Albanian vocabulary consists of Latin roots. Plus, the entire scientific world relies on Latin for the binomial nomenclature of every single species on Earth. Literally, every time you speak or study science, you are borrowing from the Romans. But it's not just our words. The Romans also dictate how you organize your life. Our 7-day week? It strictly follows the Greco-Roman system. The Romans named the days after heavenly bodies and gods. So you had dies solis for the sun, dies lunae for the moon, dies martes for Mars. These evolved directly into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and perfectly translate into modern Romance equivalents like Domingo, Lundi, and Mardi. You are literally living your life on a Roman calendar. And speaking of time, take a look at your watch. Every single time you check the time and see AM, antemeridium, or PM, postmeridium, or when you celebrate the start of a brand new day at the exact stroke of midnight, you're strictly following ancient Roman timekeeping conventions. That 12-hour clock division was their invention, and we haven't changed it since. Beyond our daily routines, Rome also shaped our deepest concepts of power and governance. The very political structures of the modern Western world were meticulously built using the Roman blueprint. I mean, the whole concept of a republic, a government representing the public, comes straight from Rome. Institutions like the United States Congress, with its Senate and the role of the president acting a whole lot like a Roman consul, were intentionally modeled by Enlightenment thinkers. Guys like John Adams avidly studied Cicero and Roman law to build modern democracy. In that political blueprint, it extended directly into the physical world too. Modern seats of power intentionally utilize Roman architectural inventions to project authority. Just picture the neoclassical design of the White House or the U.S. Capitol. They use classical columns and concrete domes, which was a Roman engineering marvel. The Romans gave us the widespread use of concrete, magnificent aqueducts, and thermal heating systems. This inspired an entire architectural revival during the 15th century Italian Renaissance that still heavily dominates our capital cities today. To truly grasp the scale of their physical engineering, consider this massive number, 400,000. The Romans built over 400,000 kilometers of roads across their empire, and over 80,000 of those were perfectly stone-paved. And here is the absolutely crazy part. The courses of many of these ancient highways survived for millennia and are still overlaid by modern roads today. We're literally driving our cars on the exact same routes where Roman legions marched 2,000 years ago. Mind-blowing, right? Beyond just infrastructure, the empire acted as a massive cultural conduit. When Christianity became the state religion under Emperor Theodosius I, it gained this global platform that fundamentally shaped Western moral philosophy. The Romans also fiercely preserved Greek science and philosophy, ensuring that natural law ethics and Stoicism actually survived through the ages. They even looked up at the stars and ensured that almost every planet in our solar system, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, and so on, bears the name of a Roman deity to this very day. So, the empire's immortal ghost. Let's tie this all together. While the physical empire itself might have succumbed to a disastrous mix of barbarian invasions, economic collapse, corruption, and urban decay, its ghost never faded. That ghost was inherited by us. It lives on through the civil laws that govern us, the neoclassical buildings we work in, the calendars we follow, and the very words we use to communicate. Since we are quite literally walking in the footsteps of a fallen empire every single day, it begs a really humbling question for all of us. If our modern society collapsed tomorrow, would our legacy be as immortal as Rome's? What exactly will people be using, speaking, or building 2,000 years from now that they inherited directly from us?